Welcome back, everybody. In this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about how to go about making a practice test. A first question that can come up is, well, why should you or why would you want to make a practice test? And there are a couple of good reasons why you would want to make a practice test. One of which, it can help you direct your studying. A lot of times when people start thinking about studying, they think, well, where do I begin? Should I redo all the homework? Should I look over my notes? What should I do in order to begin studying? And making a practice test is one way to make sure that you're thorough and that you go over all of the possible areas that can be represented on a test. And it gives you something to do other than just redoing the homework. Another good reason to do a practice test is that it can let you know how you're doing. It can help let you know what things you know pretty well and don't need to spend more time on. Or maybe you get to looking at the questions and you think, okay, I really don't remember how to do this, or don't know or never knew how to do this. And so you can spend more time focusing on those types of questions. Another thing to remember or to think about is that when you're making a practice test, it is studying because you're looking at the course material and making an evaluation about what you think is important. What do you think your instructor is going to think is important, and what maybe is less important? That kind of critical evaluation of the course content helps you actually learn the course content and how all of it interrelates with itself. So that act of making a practice test and deciding what's a good test question and what isn't is studying. So how do you do it? The first step would be to figure out what is covered on the test and how long the test will be. The instructor probably has told you this information when he or she has announced the test, or perhaps that information is contained on the syllabus. So either way, you do need to know, does the test cover chapters 1 and 2? Does it cover everything since the first midterm? Is it a comprehensive final exam for a whole course? Is it 2 hours long or a half an hour long? What are the basic facts about the test? So you're going to need to know those things. Okay, your next step is to guess how many questions will be from each textbook section. Probably the instructor won't just tell you this. You probably will be able to find out how many questions are on the test as a whole, but how many questions come from each section is usually not information that you have or are given. So you have to guess. And so some kind of careful thinking about the course material and how long the test is and how many total questions there are can help you with that. Another thing that you can do is think about how much time you'll have for each question. That can help you budget your time. So for example, an 80-minute test that has 16 questions will give you about 5 minutes a question. Okay, so you should always make that division. Divide the number of questions you have on a test by how many minutes you have, and then that'll tell you approximately how long you can spend per question. Okay, so let's say that your instructor has told you that the test will have 16 questions. And just for fun, let's say that you're preparing for the test on this two pieces of a table of contents from a pre-algebra book. So it covers a little bit about equations and a little bit about fractions. So let's say that, like I said, the instructor has told you 16 questions. Well, here chapter 3 has 4 sections. Chapter 4 has 8 sections. So 4 plus 8 is 12. There's 12 sections here, and the instructor has said there's 16 questions. So if you just went with 1 question per section, that would be 12 questions. There'd be 4 questions left over. There's definitely not enough room for 2 questions per section. So you want to start thinking also about overlap here. Section 3.1 is about simplifying algebraic expressions, and some of that you're going to need to do 3.2, which is solving equations. So 3.2 is about solving equations and a review of 2 specific properties. 3.3 is more general. It's about solving equations in 1 variable. If I was going to write a test, I would probably focus on problems from 3.3, knowing that that would include section 3.2, so I wouldn't treat 3.2 separately. In a similar way, for the fraction part, 4.4, it says adding and subtracting like fractions, least common denominator, and equivalent fractions. Section 4.5 is about unlike fractions. So I would think, well, if I could add fractions with unlike denominators, then I certainly would be able to do the information from section 4.4 where the denominators are like, right? So you can use that kind of sense of overlap to help you narrow down what you're looking at. Section 4.8, solving equations containing fractions. There's going to be significant overlap between that and section 3.3. Okay, so that kind of thinking, like I said, will help you decide approximately how many questions per section. All right. The next step is to actually choose the questions for the practice test. These problems can come from the homework, they can come from the lecture, they can come from old quizzes or tests. You can Google practice tests for whatever class you're in. There's many sources of problems. In fact, the problem is that there's probably too many problems, right? There's no shortage of math that you can draw from. So the question is, which problems should you choose? So they can come from anywhere. The problems don't need to be from homework problems. In fact, it's probably better that they're not. You're probably better off picking problems you've never done before. One thing to keep in mind is that often instructors during lecture will go over an example or something and make offhand comments like, okay, this would make a good test question. And if your instructor does things like that, then you should pay attention because he or she is probably trying to give you a hint or a hint for those students who are paying attention. So pay attention to things like that. Like I said, keep in mind that real test problems don't need to be just repeats of actual homework problems. They can be drastically different. So make sure to choose a variety of problems covering those sections you've decided were important. Okay, don't pick only problems that are easy because they make you feel good. You could write yourself a test full of things like 2 + 2 and 3 + 5 and do really well on it, but that's not going to really represent what the real test is like, right? So you want the test to closely resemble as much as you can what the real test will be like. So make sure to put some good challenging questions on there, put some problems with fractions, put some word problems even if you don't like them. Don't just put things that you already know how to do because that's not going to present much of a challenge. You want to try to figure out what the test is going to be like. Try to make your practice test as much like what you think the actual test will be as you can. And as you're picking out the questions and writing them down, if you're writing them out on your own paper, make sure to retain the answers to the questions because ultimately you're going to solve all these problems and you're going to want to grade your work. Okay, write the problems down on paper. Your test probably will be on plain paper rather than lined paper, so you're better off writing out the problems on blank paper and make sure to leave yourself room to work. Don't cram all the problems together like you're making a cheat sheet because you're not. Leave yourself place to work because you're going to write yourself an actual test. So leave yourself place to work. And then when you're done, staple your pages together and save the answers to the questions separately. Don't write the answer to the question on the question, right? Because then that's going to be a giveaway for you. All right, and then make sure to give yourself time to forget the questions and the answers. So if your test is like next week, then make sure to prepare this weekend so that you can set aside the practice test for a couple of days, forget the answers, do some other studying, make a sandwich or whatever, and then come back and take the actual practice test later. If you work with the practice test right after you've made it, then odds are you're going to remember some of the answers, and so you won't have as much of an authentic experience. All right. Also, after you've made the practice test, you may want to make a separate copy of it. Eventually, you're going to take the practice test, and you may want to take it more than once. So after you've gone to all the trouble of making this practice test, you may want to make a Xerox of it or take a picture of it with your phone or something so that you have a clean copy that you can work with for next time. All right, so that takes us to the end. Just a couple of tips on how to prepare a practice test. It's a really good way of studying or organizing your studying and a good way of giving yourself a diagnostic for how you are doing in preparation for taking a test. All right, so that takes us to the end. Let me know if you have any questions and have a great day.